This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 619 with guest Mike Wieger, recorded on August 22nd, 2024. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home, news, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. Mike, we have a string. It's going to get super hot this weekend. Then we're back to 80s. But Mike, always great to have you. The weather's the same for you. Welcome back.
It feels great to be here. No, it's super glad to be back. I was saying in pre-show, you texted me at a perfect time. In between all the seasons of sports for the kids and my sports, and so this is perfect. Really glad to be here. The weather's been super nice. We got spoiled, and we picked a weekend to go camping. We went camping 2 weekends ago to kind of end the summer out, and it was perfect. Actually, it was that. Remember that we had that one weekend where we had like 75. You wake up, you put a hoodie on. It was, and then the weekend before that, we would have melted into the ground. So yeah, it's been we've had the swings here.
Some 90s coming back this weekend, but then it looks like we're back down into the 80s again. I think we're close to the end. How's the lawn? Everybody, how's your lawn? Is it looking good?
Really good. Yeah. I'm getting that. That's been one of my addictions lately is the lawn. So yeah, it's been really nice.
Not a bad thing to be addicted to.
No,
right? No, not a bad thing to be addicted to. I mean, I guess you could spend too much money on it. But at some point you get it looking the way you want it. You got the weeds removed, whatever, right?
Well, it feels better in years like this where we've just had a good amount of rain and not too hot. Like my lawn probably looks the same as every other lawn in our neighborhood. It's really green, but it feels good to be this late in the summer and have it still look that green. It pretty much stayed that way all year.
Yeah. It has been nice. The water has been great. I don't irrigate, so it's been nice just to kind of keep it in its spot. It needs to be mowed again. I'll be mowing it this weekend, but anyways.
Me too.
Well, Mike, hang tight again. We'll want to thank our Patreon subscribers, everybody who's coming in. I appreciate you guys doing that. If you want to join that Patreon team, we have plans as little as $5, theaverageguy.tv/Patreon. And then don't forget, and several of you did this after the last show, I've put a Amazon link on the front page. So if you go to theaverageguy.tv, look in the upper right hand corner. If you're buying anything on Amazon, just click the link. It'll pass you through to Amazon. We pick up that affiliate stuff that's on there. Been changing some of the links over, but it's just easier if you think about it. Theaverageguy.tv, click on the link. It says this site's supported by Amazon or something like that. Click through it. Works for us. Appreciate you guys doing that. Many of you did after the last show.
I'm going to be sending Jim a lot of items to put in for this week. I guarantee you might buy something at the end of this, and I apologize in advance. This is one of those episodes where we're going to talk about a lot of things that are on Amazon that I've been spending a little bit on Amazon lately. It's been a little bit of a problem.
Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. No. We have two, to be honest with you. Sarah has gone into a nesting mode, and man, she's been replacing things. Like tonight, she came home with a new wine opener. So we now, one of those electronic
ones.
Yeah. Pulls the wine cork out. The other one was struggling. To be honest, it was 7 or 8 years old. I had to keep putting it back together. So she's like, new one. And then we have some of those battery operated salt and pepper shakers that grind.
Oh, nice.
That grind it for it. We did all that HelloFresh for a while. At the end of the show, I'll give you an update. Remind me, I'll give you an update on HelloFresh because you were a big part of the HelloFresh.
I was. Oh yeah.
Some big changes in that space. So I'll bring you up to date. Here, I'll write that down. HelloFresh. And then, so she got 2 new one of those, and these, so the upgrades on them were a light. So it's like a drill, when you push it in the dark, a light comes on, and so you can see where you're putting the salt and pepper on those things. So we've been upgrading that as well. So if you want to check it out, theaverageguy.tv, and click through the Amazon link. Mike, 2 weeks ago, we were dealing with no power. I mentioned at the end of the show, by the way, for some of you, let me just say this from some programming notes here. This is episode 619. Last week's was episode 618 on all the print, but in the show, I said 617. I lost my mind 2 weeks ago. I have no idea. So for some of you, you're like, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't. And then I think in in the video, I think it said 616. Here. It was a solo show.
For sure this time, right? This is 619.
It is 619.
Perfect.
Today. It is 619 today. But Mike, you and I experienced at the end of 618, the last show 2 weeks ago. I basically spent that whole show talking about how we'd lost power, how I'd used a backup generator to make it work. I kind of explained that. If you want to hear about that, you can go back to the show before this and listen in on that. I've since made some decisions about that. I'm going to talk about that with you here in a second. But Mike, you've done some things. Was that all post-storm?
It was.
Talk a little bit about what you've done in the last couple weeks then.
Yeah, well, it was kind of interesting timing. I think you guys know, I think I was a big Jackery fan for a long time, still am. Love my Jackery. Those are the portable batteries and you get solar panels, and I've always used those for camping. About a year ago, we had a minor power outage overnight, and the Jackery actually powered my fridge. I pulled the Jackery in, put the fridge, but the fridge was the only thing that was running. So it was something that I had thought, okay, maybe next time, the fridge was great, but where I get really concerned is my sump pumps. So during that storm that you talked about, a buddy at work, he, like me, has 2 sump pumps in his basement. He did lose power and his basement flooded. So he's in the process of, and he had just himself finished his basement all by himself. So it was kind of this lesson learned thing, but it was also interesting timing because the week before the storm, my next door neighbor was moving away and he was kind of in a rush to do so. And at the very end, he literally came over. He's like, anything in this garage is yours. He's like, I don't want to sell it. I need to get out of here. I don't want to ditch it. Like, what do you want? And he's like, do you want this generator? And I'm like, I'll pay you for the generator. He's like, no, I don't need any money. Just take it. I need to get out of here. I'm like, okay. So I got this old generator. Now he told me it wasn't running. You might need to look into it. It was an old one. But if you, a spark plug, clean the carb later, replace the fuel, it was running. So I had this generator sitting around, and then we have the storm that you obviously covered on your podcast. And with my buddy's story at work, I said, it's really time that I figure out what I would do, because I was really lucky. Our neighborhood is actually interesting. My cul-de-sac is on must be on a different circuit, because people across the street didn't have power. We did. And our circle is kind of notorious for that. We either have it and the neighborhood doesn't, or vice versa. So I was like, okay, it's time to kind of plan this out. And as I looked into it, my first plan of attack was just like, I have the Jackery for the fridge, but I need sump pump backups. And I don't know if you guys have looked into sump pump backups, but they are expensive. And we're talking like $1,000 per sump pump, because you need a big battery, you need to replace the whole thing. So as every single thing in my life happens, a YouTube video popped up in my feed. And I don't know how it popped up, but it was like, add generator backup power to your house easy, right? And I was like, okay, let me watch the video. Long story short, my next project that I was going to embark on that weekend was installing an outlet for my generator on the outside of my house and installing an interlock kit. And I had no idea what any of that meant or what this was going to be when I got into it. But here's what it is. Essentially, what you can do is you can install a receptacle, and I will share my screen here real quick, kind of show you what it looks like. Let's see, window. Oh, I should have had this up already.
That's all right. We'll get there eventually. It is okay. Go ahead, bring it. Boom.
All right. So for the audio listeners and video listeners, you can hear it. For audio listeners, essentially what you can do is you can buy a 30 amp or a 50 amp power receptacle. It's weatherproof, and it's essentially an outlet that you plug into on the outside of your house. And you have to kind of decide 30 or 50 amps. We'll probably get into that here in a little bit. I went with 30. And then all you have to do is wire this receptacle. You have to get electrical wire down into wherever your main panel is. Now, some people are very lucky and their main panel is outside, so it's really easy. You can do all of this outdoors. My electrical panel is actually in my basement. And so where I chose to install this for you video watchers, you can see, essentially I have my main power coming in on the side of my house, and it runs down an insulated pipe, and it goes down and follows directly right into my breaker, which is right below this meter. So what I decided to do, I was like, well, I know those wires go to my box, and I really didn't want to drill any new holes in my house. So I actually took the cover off of that piping, because I figured your cover is always replaceable. Like if this for some reason was not code when we need to move, I can take the cover off, put a new cover on, and it's like nothing was ever there. So I took the cover off. I drilled a little hole in it, and bought some of this. I'm forgetting the name of it. It's like flex something type of tubing. It's great. Liquid tubing or something. And essentially you get it in the electrical aisle. You can cut it to whatever length you need. So got it all watertight. And then the best part about this is behind the cover, when you open it up, you essentially just see all your main wires running down to your box. And so what you need is you need the power receptacle. You need some 10-3 wire if you're doing 30 amp. You want 6-3 wire if you're doing 50 amp. And really, the wiring's the most expensive part.
It is now.
All I needed was 15 feet. And I think that was about $70 worth of electrical wire. And that was 10-3. 6-3 is even more expensive. Side note, if you're dumb like me and have never done electrical, when you look at the wires, there's 4 of them, but they call it 3. They say 10 through. So 10 is your gauge. 3 is the wires. They're counting the conductors, not the ground. So I'm in there asking the guy I'm like, well, I'm looking at the picture. There's 4. I'm like, is there 10-4 wire? And he's like, I don't know. And so then I found out, long story short, even though it has 4 wires in there, you're looking for 10-3.
Well, and you're going to wire it 240, right? So you need this isn't 120 voltage. You're going to wire it 240 out of the, right?
Yes.
So that's why you need the 3, right? That's why you need the 3.
Correct.
2 hots and
a common,
neutral.
Neutral, and then your ground.
So a red, a black, and a white with your white and your neutral.
And this project, I should just said it from the beginning. I've done wire work with ham radio. I've never done it in my electrical, except for actually this room that I'm in right now is kind of my golf sim room. This didn't have any lights in it, and I put in some can lights and some switches, learned some videos. So I had a very limited experience. But with that limited experience, this is still something a total amateur could do. You definitely want to be safe with it. You want to watch as many videos because you're dealing with some dangerous stuff. But so long as you have, a meter to kind of check and make sure there's no electricity flowing whenever you're working on this stuff, this is something that anyone really could tackle.
And we should say, check your local code.
Yes.
Right. Because the electrical code is different every area. Make sure you're up to date with sometimes conduit is specified in the code. Sometimes length is specified in the code. Sometimes the wiring is specified in the code. So just check with your code. By the way, you can get an electrician to do this as well.
Oh, for sure.
And
yes.
It's not terribly expensive. You're paying for somebody's time, but it is, you can have an electrician do this. They do this all the time. But like you're saying, this actually isn't that hard to set up.
No, so it's not.
Keep going.
And the other thing, one thing that I probably should have just consulted with an electrician because I was getting conflicting information. So definitely check this. If you're not getting kind of outdoor rated wire, I got the stuff that the Romex you would see on the inside. What I did read is if you're going to use that, take the outdoor casing off, either have outdoor rated or take the sheathing off because that cardboard in there will get wet and it'll soak and it'll keep the water around the wire. So I actually took the wires out of that. So mine are the insulated wires, but I took them out of the Romex outer casing. When I did
you could also purchase these wires separately if you wanted to. You could get spools of that 10 gauge. That 10 you're talking about is gauge 10 or 6 gauge wire. You can get separate wires and run them without the Romex around them, as we call it here in the United States. And you would run those 3 wires in plus a ground.
Correct.
To make it work.
Yep.
Yeah.
So on the outside, those receptacles make it really easy to wire in. And Tony actually brings up a really good point, which kind of leads us to the inside of the house. Tony asks, and it doesn't power back to the grid. So here's the part on the inside. So when you're running this on the inside, to make it code, either you need to do one of 2 things. You need to install a sub panel where you're going to have kind of the switch back and forth. Or this is also code, even though it kind of looks janky. It's called an interlock switch. So for the people watching on the video, you can kind of see what this is. Essentially, the interlock switch, what it does is a physical piece of metal that prevents both your main and your generator breaker from being on at the same time. Because if your main is off, you're not going to be backfeeding power to the grid. So the interlock switch, once I switch my main off, you can slide the piece of metal up and then turn your generator breaker on. But this is where I learned a lot. So from the picture, you guys can see once you have run the wire into your box, you are essentially wiring it up just like any other breaker in your house. So in your breaker box, you'll see you have them all. So you do need, so I have a dual 30 breaker. You can see on this top right here, when you're buying your interlock switch, I just got mine off Amazon. Actually, I got all these parts almost off Amazon. I went to Lowe's for the wiring just because to get that locally. But the interlock switch, do pay attention because it will tell you where. Number one, you need to know what type of box you have because sometimes people's main switch is up top. Sometimes it's vertical, sideways. So you got to kind of look at the pictures and make sure you're getting the right one. You also need to know what position your breaker needs to be in for your generator. So actually, I had something in this top right slot that I had to move down to the bottom left. So it actually used to be my range. You can see I crossed that out. But essentially what you do is you put in your breaker, you wire your 2 hots into your breaker. You run your neutral to the neutral bus bar. You run your ground to the ground bus bar. If you guys have ever opened up your panel, it's pretty obvious what those are.
It's Legos. It's literally Legos for wiring. It's not as complicated, I think, as a lot of people.
No.
Now, you can screw it up.
You can.
So you got to be careful, but it's not difficult.
The only really danger that you need to keep in mind is even if your main is off, if you don't have any sort of breaker on the outside of your house, those wires are still hot coming into the breaker. So you're going to have 2 kind of big bolts, 2 lugs that if you were to touch those, there is still power, but you know that anything from the main down is safe because you've turned on. And always use a meter, always test. I tested it like 20 times just to make sure. And then I told Hannah up the life insurance. I'm about to power it on and see how this goes.
A lot of juice.
A lot of juice. But once you have this all wired up, you close it back up. I ran a test and I flipped off my main on the generator breaker. And essentially what this does is now any other breaker that is on is getting power from your generator.
Yeah.
So the solution here is that you ran the outlet in to your main panel. So now that anything you have running can be powered, you will need to just kind of test and see how much juice and what type of, your generator can run a certain wattage. And you just need to kind of play with that. If we have some time, because I want to kind of get into your side of this, Jim, there's another piece to this that if you want to be able to run your air conditioner, there's something called a soft start kit. And that's actually phase 2 of this project for me as I ordered the kit and I'm going to get that installed. Air conditioners take a lot of start amperage. To start up an AC, the amperage is really high, like 120 amps. Well, that your generator likely is not going to do that. But you can get kits that will bring that starting amperage down by about 75% if you wanted to be able to run it. I think the final thought from my side on this, Jim, is the big decision you need to make when you run this is a 30 amp or a 50 amp. And that's really going to depend on the generator you have. Or if you haven't bought one yet, the budget you have for your generator. My generator was a 30 amp. It was free to me.
Yeah.
Looking back now, once I powered it on, I think if I was going to do it over again, I would just buck up and pay the extra money for the generator and the extra money for the 6.3 wire instead of the 10.3 and probably do 50 amps just to make sure I'm fully covered. But the good news is my house is relatively small. I don't need to run everything. Really, I'm just worried about my sump pumps, my refrigerator, some of those items, but it will be nice to be able to power anything else in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the good news, Mike. You've done it once. If you wanted to upgrade to the 50 amp, you're talking about some wires.
Yeah.
A new box. Like you've done it. You know how to make this work. You're probably in at $200 for the outside box for the wiring to get it set up. You're
exactly right. It was all in, I think, $195 when I kind of added up all the costs, $195 for all the parts.
200 get you set. I will say, I was chatting with my good friend Ed Sullivan last weekend or 2 weekends ago about this after the show. He owns a Generac. By the way, if you want to go the Generac route, you do nothing. They come out, they set it up, they wire it, they have a cutover. It's beautiful. It's $15,000. So the solutions we're talking about are $2,000, maybe $3,000 if you get real fancy with it.
Oh, I think less than that. I think like the generator I have, I marked out new for a 30 amp one, about $800, $900 to get in for some of those. So you can do it for around $1,000. 2,000 probably beefs you up a little bit if you're looking 50 amp.
Mine is in your category. I have a 5K generator. It's got a 30 amp circuit on it. And it can do, we talked about this in the last show, it can do quite a bit. I think I'm going to upgrade it to a 12K and it's going to be 50 amps.
Yep.
I'm going to bring here. I'll show you what I'm going to bring in. Let me share my screen here for a second. Share screen, and we'll go over here to that window. So the box looks very similar to what you did, except it's a 50 amp box.
Yep.
And in this case on Amazon, it comes with a 15-foot cable.
Which actually that makes this very much worth it. That cable alone for me was like $60.
Yeah. And for on a 50 amp box for the cable by itself, it's $100. So in this case, you get the box and the cable. I know they fit all that other good stuff. $100 as on the screen. So I'm going to go 50 amp. I actually too have a newer, I put in last fall, we put in a brand new Sear 2 air conditioner, 3-ton. It doesn't pull the amps because I looked into this soft start. Basically it kind of brings it up slowly. So it doesn't have this huge amp draw. And I was like, so I looked up the specs on the thing, and it pulls less than 40 amps at startup.
Oh, awesome.
And so you're like, I don't know if I need to put it fresh.
You don't.
If I need to put a soft start on there. So if you have an older air conditioner, listen, in your home, there are just a few things that pull that many amps. Your air conditioner is one of them. Some pumps can also be a little bit of an
electric ranges. Those are the things that are going to take a lot of amp draw.
The other thing you need to think about is your watt draw, right? Yes. How many watts your electric range is going to pull a lot of amps, a lot of watts. It's heating things up. A little tiny toaster can pull as many as 1,800 watts. Right. So just some sizing things to consider. Real quick from chat, Joe says also you get insulated screwdrivers at Harbor Freight. You were talking about those live coming in.
Yes.
Right? You gotta be smart about this.
You do.
So be careful. Fridge freezers will stay cold for a while. They will if you don't open them. If you add some ice to them, if you've got a lot of stuff in them, actually the more stuff you have in them, the better it is during an outage. Right? You can add ice. We had a lot of folks. Ice sold out pretty quick here in Bellevue and up in Omaha as well as that happened. So bringing in, so I think what I'm going to do, and actually I have the same Interlock kit.
Oh, I love it. Yep.
That I bought at Amazon. This is $20.
Yes.
It's that metal piece that blocks it out so you can't feed it back. What you don't want to be is the guy who has a generator on that's feeding it back up the line, and then you've got your power guys trying to restore power, and now listen, they're super careful before they touch the lines, but you don't want to be that guy.
Yes.
Right? That is back feeding. So
just code. If you ever want to sell your house, the Interlock kit is code. So you're good.
Neil, you had sent me an email. I know you listen every week. You had sent me an email mentioning this, and we were moving this direction. So, Mike, you and I have the same box. My Interlock kit is exactly the same as yours. It's shaped exactly the same. I will need to purchase a 50 amp breaker to get that done. So I have an extra 30 amp when they put it in. They gave me an extra 30 amp. I don't know what made them think to just put a 30 amp in there that's blank. But it's there.
That's weird. Yeah.
It's a backup, I guess.
Okay.
I'll pull that, and I'm going to need to do what you did. Is I need to swap the top two at the bottom, right below it. I'll need to swap those. So I'll need to kind of rewire it, and then I'll put the new 50 amp in, and then put the Interlock kit in. So that's coming up. That's coming up as well. As you were installing it, did you run into any problems?
Getting the wire from the outside to your box is always the hardest part. I was already following conduit that had my main lines in, and it was still, I used just a little bit of soap on the end. I taped all three of them up at the same time, just a little bit of soap. I know it's not good to put water in that line, but just a little bit, just so it would go in a little bit easier. That was honestly the hardest part. Everything else after that was pretty darn good. I did what you guys will want to do too, is especially if you have an older generator, I don't have it with me. They plug in, it's a watt meter. Plug that in just to the regular 120 outlet, and then put something like a space heater on it with a little load. Check frequency should be 60 hertz, and check your volts. Mine, because actually when I did do the test, it was working but some lights were flickering and I wasn't pulling a lot of amperage. I was like, oh, okay, something's a little weird. I was running at 55 hertz and like 100 volts. It was way down. And I'm kind of glad that all my electronics are on UPSs because electronics are pretty sensitive if you're really out of frequency. So that's my only other piece of advice. And really, if you do run into that, for me, once I knew that, I was like, okay, now how do I fix it? Most older generators especially have kind of a governor. And usually the spring has just gotten loose over time and it's not keeping it as tight. You readjust it, screw it back down. So what I had my son reading the watt meter on one side of the generator while I was on the other, and I was just tell me when it's 60, and we were turning. And so that's my only other piece of advice is don't assume your generator is actually putting out clean power. To double check it with a watt meter before you plug it into your house.
Well, with your Jackery, right, that you led with, I put, I have a Blue Eddy in front of all my computers. Okay. And the whole intent of that was that feeds them a pure sine wave power.
Exactly.
Regardless. Yep. And I could, with even all of them on at the same time running full power, that the Blue Eddy would run them for an hour.
Okay.
Like, as a backup.
Perfect.
Start shutting things down. You can get down to 3, 4, 5 hours, but that gives me some time. Even if the generator is struggling, like in this case, it doesn't, the battery input doesn't need as much clean power as your equipment does. So I also like the idea of putting some really good batteries in front of your electronic equipment in a lot of ways. Now everything, the computers, the networking equipment, everything goes through the Blue Eddy. I have a 180, an AC 180, $800, which is a cheap generator, to be honest, but it's also serves as a UPS. Yeah. So, I mean, I could kind of justify that in some ways.
If you don't do anything else, I recommend that. Yeah. That will save your bacon. It's not a matter of if, when, but like I have UPSs on almost everything except for actually so when I moved and built this setup here, I need to actually get one on it. But yes, the pure sine wave, just all of that. It'll be worth it.
You'll be happy that you did. You got that. I love it. There's a bunch of different brands. They all, EcoFlow and Jackery, they all seem to be doing a nice job in that area right now. Yep. And I just have it down here. It's plugged in. It's my UPS. It's an expensive UPS, but when you're running as much stuff, you could probably, it's powerful enough. It could probably power those sump pumps of yours for a certain amount of time, right?
Yeah.
Give you enough time in a storm. Usually in storms, the rain is coming down like buckets. And so you need that power right then. Give you some time to set up the generator, plug it in, get that connected to the battery backup. It's, by the way, these solar generators are kind of designed, their input inverters, right? The stuff coming in from solar is kind of designed for really crappy power because it's
inconsistent.
It's on, it's off, it's clouds, it's different voltages. And so it's a night from a generator standpoint, it's a nice thing to have in front of everything.
And do that's something I haven't checked into. Does EcoFlow or any of those, I'm sure it's top dollar, but do any of those have like a 30 or 50 amp out? Because the other way about this too is you could put the EcoFlow outside, plug that into the outlet and that into the generator. And then your whole house is getting the benefit of that. Yeah. I'm sure those are top dollar ones that have that kind of power out. Yeah. But that's another option, right? So that's what that outlet gives you is kind of that flexibility.
Yeah. I went down that rabbit hole in the last 2 weeks. Right. And for my size of a house, we're talking about $7,000 in batteries.
Wow.
So what you would do is, instead of, you basically have wired in an outlet straight into your board. What you're doing is taking the batteries and wiring them into your board. Now you can buy, there's Tesla units for this, or you can buy, there's whole home solutions you can buy. But if we're talking purely DIY, right, you could do the same thing with batteries where you got the same 50 amp plug-in. It'll run at 50 amp 240 and you could plug that in and it's actually a really great solution. Now, $7,000, and I got a little feedback from the friends from a couple weeks ago, like $7,000 is a hard thing to swallow for a backup that happens every 5 years.
Yes.
at some point you kind of go, well, turn some fans on and open some windows.
Suck it up, Sally, right? Yeah. Yes.
As long as you can keep your fridges on, you're not going to lose food.
And your sump pumps, you're not flooding. You're not creating more than $7,000 worth of damage, right?
No, right on.
Yes.
Right on. Yeah, those things that matter to you. You can cook on the grill.
Yeah.
It's right. Some of those kinds of things.
Yes.
So I kind of abandoned that idea. I'm going to run, and let me show you, I think, so this will be the next generator that I buy. And I'm going to keep the 5,000 watt generator as the neighborhood backup because dude, when you have a generator and you can help people out, you are a freaking hero.
That's all I did during the week was lend mine out because I had power. I was like, here, who needs it? I'll put it in my truck. I'll bring it anywhere. Yes, you're the best friend when that happens.
So great, right?
I love this Predator line. I've heard really good things.
Yes. Yeah, Harbor Freight. We have a brand new Harbor Freight here in Bellevue. 13,000 watts, so a 13K tri-fuel. So you can run it off natural gas, you can run it off propane, and you can run it off gasoline. Would
you tap that into your natural gas line? I've always thought about that.
I would set it up as backup for sure.
Oh yeah, because then your fuel is not unlimited, but usually my gas lines aren't going out. Even when the power's out.
For our audio folks, this generator is 1,200, which is, listen, I paid 800 for the 5K.
Yeah.
So you kind of go, okay, that's actually not bad. That's not a bad price. Here's the thinking, Mike. So in this situation where we lost power, I would start with gasoline. So I have it topped off, fire it up, plug it into the house, switch over the stuff, get the house fired up. We got a call from OPPD, our power company, within 24 hours. And they said, expect 5 days. Right. And then you're like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my natural gas line. I'm going to switch this thing over to natural gas.
Yeah.
Now, natural gas is the worst energy producing gas in a generator. So you go from 13K to 10K, right? If you're running propane, you go from 13K to 11K. Then gas will get you that 12 or 13K that's in there. So gas is by far the most powerful. But listen, I was making 2 or 3 runs to the gas station every day to get gas, right? Type deal. And yeah, you could say, well, okay, get some bigger gas cans. Well, gas is heavy.
Yeah.
And do you want to be storing that stuff in your garage? Like one of those kinds of things.
And ideally, you're turning the generator off when you're refueling with gas. Ideally. Right?
Oh, you're really?
Because those get hot and gas likes to light on fire.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a couple times. There were a few hot fills.
Yeah. But that's where your natural gas, you wouldn't have to worry about it.
No.
You can plug that in and keep running it the whole time.
Justin says we can get cables that plug into a bayonet fitting in the natural gas line so you can wire barbecues. Should be able. Yeah, no, totally, Justin. You can get the same thing for these natural gas. In fact, this Predator comes with that line, and then you can, in my case, I'm going to actually have to have a person come out. I wouldn't do my own gas.
I wouldn't either. Nope.
Really clear. I could do wiring, but no gas. That stuff is, in my mind, that stuff's super dangerous. Now, I'll remind folks, I was an electrician in the military, so had a bunch of training around this, right? And I've done a bunch of electrical stuff, but I am not going to monkey with gas. So I'll need to have somebody come in and run a line from my natural gas hot water heater out to the outside. And yeah, I could do propane or I could do natural gas for my grill. I don't want to. I like propane in that case. In some cases, I like the pellet grill, so that works as well. But Mike, in this case where we got that phone call and they were like 5 days, you're like, natural gas. I would turn it off. I would plug everything in. I'd fire it up on natural gas and take the hit. You take the watts hit and a little bit of amps. On that, to be honest. But that would work real well. So as you can already see, the Interlock kit is here. So I'm watching the price I've been watching prices on, I don't need to do this today. So been watching, we've had a house guest, so I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I will get that cable and the outside box. Get the wiring again, like you said. I'm going to be in, because it's 50 amp, probably be $250, $300.
Yeah,
get that set up, wired in, and then and you know this, right? You've got to, with an interlock kit, then once you turn off the main power, turn on the generator power, you really got to turn most of your breakers off, right?
Yeah, you don't want that all hitting all at once.
Yeah, because the generator, and it can't, to be honest with you, it can't do the whole house. There's some things like my furnace, or I'm sorry, my stove is on a separate breaker. I'm going to shut that off. I don't need it at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Kitchen, I'm going to leave that on because it's got the fridge circuits on it, right? Some of those kinds of things. I'm actually going to go through to and identify and put some dots on those breakers that I want to turn on during a power outage. So flick it, turn the main power off, shut everything off, start the generator, plug the generator circuit on, and then start flipping on the breakers.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's the plan. So that's where I'm headed in the next, and I'm not in a hurry. We only get these things. These events only happen every couple of years. So I'll take my time. I'm kind of hoping I'll get a Harbor Freight coupon of some kind that gets me 20% off anything. They run those deals from time to time. But do you think you'll upgrade at some point now that you know this? Do you think you'll spend some time upgrading it?
It'll all depend on the soft start kit. So if I can get my soft start kit so that this could run the AC, I won't upgrade. If it still can't run on 30 amps, then I might in the future. The good news is, though, I mean, if this ever, actually, most of the time we've lost our power, it's in the winter. Don't ask me why, but the winter is when we use it. And the heater doesn't take that much power because that's running on gas. So if it's in the wintertime, I'm totally fine. So no, I'm pretty happy for now with the 30 amp. And for me, it would require a whole new generator, all new wires. So no, I'm going to live out at least the first storm at 30 amps and see how that goes.
It's good to go through it one time with what you have. You learn some things, and you're like, I actually hardwired the furnace so that I have a plug coming out of it so that I could get that fan working in the furnace in an emergency situation in the winter. I could turn that on because natural gas works regardless of the electricity, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted that at least to be able to heat us. And actually, I'm going to leave it that way. I rewired it so that plug comes out and into a plug that's got a switch on it. Anybody coming to service the furnace can just flick the switch off. It will cut the power off to the furnace and get it done that way. By the way, you can watch hundreds of YouTube videos on how to do this.
Yes, you can. And I watched close to all of them. Yep.
There are literally hundreds. And once you've seen, I don't know, a dozen, you kind of get like, oh, okay, red goes here, black goes here, white goes there. I need to put the ground in this. Mm-hmm. Probably in my case, I don't have to, but I'm going to have a permanent stand for the generator outside that when I need to move, the generator is still portable, so I can move it off the stand, but it will have a grounding rod. I mean, I already have a grounding rod installed out here, and I'll run a ground to it. That then you roll it up and hide it when you're not using it, but when the generator's there, you unroll it, and it's part of the setup process. Roll the generator out where you want it, plug it in, plug the ground in, just to make sure. It's you can't be too safe on that. You don't. In some cases, these generators have an internal ground, and you don't have to worry about it. But it does just make sense. Just ground the thing, right?
Yeah,
get it grounded, right?
Yep.
So cool. Well, when you said you'd had a story, anything else you'd add to that, Mike? Anything you learned through that experience? You didn't need to use it, so
no, I didn't need to use it. It's funny though; it gets you thinking about all the things. To your point, what you would keep on and off. Something as silly as, oh, I should probably turn off my Olama self-hosted ChatGPT because that's a big GPU taking about 500 watts all the time. Something I wouldn't think about. Hey, turn off that VM, right? Turn off that virtual machine. You don't need that GPU cranking up all the time. So I was starting to make a list of just like, hey, maybe don't run XYZ if we have it on.
Yeah,
but it's
I turned off
great learning experience.
I turned off the Unraid machine.
Yeah,
because heat was an issue at some point, right? We had two air conditioners running upstairs, but down here it was getting pretty hot, and so the YouTube rig, which has got the GPU, creates a little bit of heat. Unraid creates a little bit of heat. I turned both of those off, and I've had the mining rigs off for a while. So I was really down to the Mac Mini, 85 watts for that Mac
That's
Mini
good.
and the monitor. And you're like, huh, I could probably be doing a lot less.
Oh yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Final thing I'll mention there, real quick. We mentioned the battery backups for like the server racks.
Yeah.
I will say if you do run a server rack that you can put a computer style UPC in that has the USB port. One thing I did learn, because what's nice about that is the UPS talks to the computer, and you can tell your computer, hey, when your battery backup is at 15%, do a clean shutdown. Yeah. That way it's not just draining all the way down. And what I learned is Unraid, if you have that UPS plugged into Unraid, Unraid obviously has the settings where it'll detect the UPS and you can tell it. It's also acting as a UPS, I think it's called the APC daemon server. So what I did was I installed that daemon on all my other machines, and they all just look to Unraid. Unraid has the cord plugged into the UPS because you only have one cord. And then it talks to all the other ones saying, hey, now you shut down, you shut down. So I didn't know that was even a thing. I didn't know that you could have essentially that APC daemon because I was like, well, I only have one cable, but I have like 5 servers in here that I would love to clean shut down in that event. So something to check into.
And I actually have, so Blue Eddy sits on the very front of everything. And then I have a couple UPSs. Like I have all the networking gear is actually on a UPS itself.
Yeah.
And that's plugged in to the other.
You got batteries on batteries on batteries.
I kind of do.
Yeah.
And so you've got some redundant. Do I need it? No, but it's actually, yes, I do need it. I was super when the power went down, I was still at work and I was trying to drive home and I had to pull into a garage. I had to pull into the Hilton garage to shelter. I mean, it was bad. You remember how bad this was.
Yep. And it was right during rush hour. And it was right at the end of the day.
By the time I got home and I got in here and the power was gone and you're just kind of glad. I mean, it was 30 minutes before I got home and I came in and things were, still working. I didn't have to worry about any problems with stuff. And it gave me a lot of freedom and a lot of time to make some decisions. Okay, what do I want to leave up? What do I want to take down? What do I want to plug in? I know those fridges, like, Justin had said, you get about 4 hours on your fridge, which is awesome. So you don't need to make a lot of decisions in that moment. But if you're going to be out a while, once it does start going bad, I stress out hard. Right. Yeah. And so it's just kind of nice. Bring that generator up, plug in the fridges, get the freezers going. You sleep so much better knowing that all that stuff is working. So figure out, by the way, in our Discord group, theaverageguy.tv/Discord, Justin posted in there his backup setup, and it's pretty amazing. So you want to jump in there, check that out. It's pretty intense. It's got a big motor.
Oh, I love it.
It's got a big motor. And Ed too has taken the Generac solution, and we're again a little more expensive, but if you want a maintenance plan and you don't want to think about it and you just want your house to cut over, it's not. I mean, I think, Mike, if I was in a situation where I absolutely could not lose power, $10,000 or $15,000, I think it's a pretty good investment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're someone who medical equipment that you run that can't, if you're in that situation, or even if you're just in a remote area that loses power often, I'd be going with that. Right. Because, if you're in the mountains and when you get snow covered, you lose power quite a bit. Yeah.
They come out, they set it up,
right?
They put it in, they make it all work. You put a maintenance plan on this thing. It fires itself up, I think, once a month or every other week runs for 10 minutes and then shuts itself back off. They come out and do all that stuff. So
did you happen to see the YouTube video of the guy who bought the military surplus generator and he got it because it was damaged, like the outside was all beat up, but he got essentially this military grade huge diesel generator for like $2,000.
Yeah.
And he did a whole install video because that's like 3-phase power. Yep. It was pretty cool.
Those are 240/20Ks in some cases. Really? And
I know all about them. That's what he probably worked on. Yeah. So he was finding those. I'm like, that's actually a pretty genius. He laid a concrete, pad, put that in there, and
diesel. They just run forever.
Oh yeah.
Tough as nails.
Yep.
Loud.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Tony says, and Mike, I'll ask you this. He says, or charge my Tesla. Yeah, you could do that, or in some cases that Tesla can feed power back into the house.
Yeah, that was the reason I'd originally looked at that F-150 Lightning was it can power the house in that case.
Yeah. It becomes and I know out in California, the Tesla battery wall, that's another thing a lot of folks do. Mike, if energy wasn't so cheap in Nebraska, this is the problem.
Yes.
Every time we do a cost analysis on this thing, you're like, it never pays for itself.
It never, in Nebraska, the way it is now, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you're like, this is when I looked into I could do the whole battery thing, and I may put some solar panels up, and I could and then you're like, that never pays. No. That actually, you're losing money. Now, yeah, you get a backup out of the deal and some of those kinds of things, but you're like, in the long term. So until that changes, and eventually it probably will.
They will here. Yeah.
Things will get a little bit cheaper. So, hey, you'd also mention Meshtastic, and talk Meshtastic. Talk a little bit about that.
Meshtastic. So, my love of ham radio has not gone anywhere. But this is a really cool project that if you are not a ham, you don't have a license to do this. If you want us to have some fun with radio, Meshtastic is kind of taken the world by storm. And best way to describe Meshtastic is it is a bunch of little radios, cheap radios. They run on the LoRa platform, so long range. It uses about 900 megahertz in the United States. That frequency can change if you're in Europe or if you're in other areas. But essentially what you're doing is you're taking cheaper radios, about 900 megahertz, and you are, just as the name implies, creating a mesh. So these things are essentially, you can think about them as off-grid communication devices. And what you do is you buy the radios. The radio, so if you're watching on video, I bought the radio. They're about $30 on Amazon, real cheap. I'll put some links. This one is the Heltec V3. And I 3D printed the case. So I've been really deep into my 3D printing hobby still. And so for $30 plus 3D printing the case, and you can actually buy the cases online if you want to, or the 3D printing community is pretty strong. You essentially get one of these. If you really want to play around, get two, because that's the whole point, is to be able to communicate. But what you will find is these things have a really long range communication. So when I say long range, we're talking miles here. So when you are, especially in my basement, it'll be a little different. But if I'm outdoors, or even if I'm at my main level, anyone else who has also made a Meshtastic device, you'll see them if they're within a couple miles of you. And you guys are probably very familiar with mesh in terms of Wi-Fi. These do the same thing. So if there's a friend of mine who lives in downtown Omaha, I live all the way in West Omaha. My device doesn't need to see his. I just need to see a few hops along the way. So I can connect to a guy down the street who he can see even further, and you can use a few hops to get your message across. The way you interact with this device is actually through an app on your phone. So what you're doing is you have an app on your phone. It's using Bluetooth to connect to your radio, and then all the communication is going out of the radio. So I'm shocked, actually. Omaha has a really good network. Really? And if you think of another way, this is essentially, think about creating your own Verizon that is off-grid, controlled by you, because you are essentially creating little towers all around. So I'll kind of show you guys real quick on this one. So if you connect, so I have like 10 of these. But of course, I'll show you the cool one here in a second. This isn't even the cool one. This is my mold.
Of course you do.
So this goes with me everywhere.
Great. They'll be sold by next week.
Right. But even just in Omaha, if I zoom in. So, is that going to focus? So see, there's a map of Omaha. Those are all the different nodes that my device can see right now. So I can talk to people downtown, anyone around here. So there's a pretty good community here in Omaha. Other cities, I went to Portland on a business trip and I took one of these. Portland has hundreds. I mean, you pretty much have like cell coverage of Meshtastic in some of these towns. So you use the app, and you can see when you use the app, you essentially have chat. So it looks just like a texting app on your phone. And what you can do is there is a main channel that everyone kind of has access to. So anyone that's within range, when I send it out, they will see it. But what you can do is you can create encrypted channels. So I created like a Wieger family channel, and I put it on just my devices. Essentially, all you have to do is know the encryption key. It's a standard AES key. If you have the key and you share that key, my message still uses the mesh. It passes along, but since it's encrypted, no one can see it except for devices that have the key. It's just like if you were doing a game of telephone and you were the only one in that group that spoke Spanish, you and the end person, you would say in Spanish and they would pass along, but they don't know what you mean, right? It's very similar concept with what you can do there. So the encryption side of this is really cool. It's a really fun way. Like I said, does not require a ham radio license. This is free licensed frequencies. So anyone can build one of these for $30. And if you really want to start having fun, what I have started doing is building these outdoor nodes that are solar powered. So what I have done is
you got to come to the video to see.
Yeah,
this.
you got to come to the video.
Awesome. Yeah,
this is I bought all of these just pieces. I bought essentially an outdoor rated box, and I bought this is like $5 USB solar panel. I snipped the USB cord off the end and just wired those in. I put all the radio gear in this box. So $30 for the radio, plus probably about $45 in parts. This is a weatherproof. The antenna's on the top, and I actually have one of these mounted on a pole on my roof. And the great part about that is when it's on the roof, this is kind of talking to all the long range. My devices, I can be in my basement. My basement mesh doesn't need to be able to get out. It just, as long as I can see my roof one, and my roof one's doing the long range talking. Yeah. So I have been building all sorts of different form factors of this to kind of test out and see what works best. But there is a whole online culture to Meshtastic. It's fantastic. It's a really fun thing to really mess around with.
All right. Is there a battery in there of some kind?
Yeah. So actually I can open this up. I'll open this up.
Make it big here. Yeah.
So if I open it up without everything falling apart, so you'll see there's a 1,000 milliamp hour battery in there.
Okay.
You have your radio up top. Your radio, the one I chose, actually has a solar input. So all I had to do was wire in the red and black cables that I cut off the end of this USB solar panel, wired it in. So it's really simple. I mean, the radio is really tiny. The battery's the biggest part. This thing never drops below 98%. It gets enough sun throughout the day. They're already really low power devices. So I could probably have, a month of cloudy days in a row with no sun and still be fine. And then it charges back up whenever it has sunlight. So these, the funny part is people have been posting online funny places they just put these around town and see how long before they get stolen. Because for a $30 radio, I mean, if it gets stolen, that kind of sucks. But you can kind of just put these up anywhere. And people have been making much more official ones looking than this. But the final thing I'll say, it's also really fun to go in airplanes with them because these they're such long range that as you're flying, I'm picking up all of these on the ground.
Oh, wow.
So I flew to Omaha to Portland, and I probably got 100, and you can send a message. So I would just say like, hello from flight Southwest 3, and I would get responses. Oh, super cool. And they're on the ground somewhere and you're up in the airplane. And this is, it doesn't look the best. You probably scare a lot of passengers having this out. But I honestly just kept this in my backpack under the seat. Because obviously you Bluetooth to your phone. Yeah. No one even knew I had it with me. TSA doesn't care about them. Right. It's a really, really cool kind of project that they've started over there.
So the ecosystem is restricted to the app. Is that right? I mean, so you're talking about communication within it doesn't give you data or any of those kinds of things.
It gives you, it can be used for telemetry too. So for example, this one has a GPS unit in it. Let's go to, so like does this gentleman have one? Yeah. So, I mean, you saw on the map everything, but it can be used for telemetry. So it can pull in temperature data. It can share all sorts of stuff, whatever you want to share through it. It can share that telemetry. So people have been actually coming up with really good kind of use cases. They're very popular right now for hunting leases. If you have like ground that doesn't have good cell coverage, when you go and check in, they hand these out and you can message all throughout the property. They also do make, actually, I'm sure whoever makes, do you remember the old BlackBerries that had the keyboard?
Oh yeah.
Whoever's the producer of those is having a great second life because everyone has been buying those devices. They're about $50. You get the board and the keyboard. It looks just like a BlackBerry. They sell them without the case, and people just 3D print a case for them. So in that case, you don't have to have the phone. You have a keyboard built into your device. So you wouldn't need a phone to actually use it.
Yeah.
But a really fun project. And the community is really fun. All the guys who have them here, we're all nerds. So we message us about nerdy stuff. And but, in the case of cell towers going down, give my wife one of these. And I know that across Omaha, we have pretty much full coverage to message each other if we needed to.
Yeah, that's the real use case on this, right?
Yes.
Is to be able to, if communications are down, you've pre-set up the network, right?
Yeah.
They're going to stay up. They're going to, even in the, we just talked about power.
Yeah.
In this case, your tower is up and running.
And it's solar. That thing runs forever.
It's going to be okay. In theory, then you could be able to have communication, say you were out of town, if you could just find a spot that had the network that you needed, you could jump on there and then securely, right, communicate with her.
And what you just hinted on is a little bit unique. So by default, you have to be within range of one of the hops. So like if I was out of town, I wouldn't be able to connect back to Omaha. However, there is the ability. Now there's this, the community is kind of divided if we actually like this, but you can use MQTT to connect different meshes together. So if you had one device that had an internet connection and it was in Omaha and it could see all the Omaha nodes, and there was another device in Kansas City that had the internet connection and it could see all the Kansas City nodes, you could use kind of an internet backbone between two of the nodes so that those two meshes could talk to each other. But otherwise you're kind of limited by, for example, if you were on a farm and no one else had these, you're not going to see anything else. You're not going to see any other nodes unless you get one within range. But yeah, I mean, within the range of the device, you're going to have connection.
The range of the devices.
Yes.
Though, right? So like
about 5 hops is what is the best. So you can get 5 hops away from that person you're trying to reach.
But those 5 hops are geographically limited, right? Say I'm in the Bay Area and there's, I'm thinking between San Francisco and LA, there are people, right?
Yes.
And in theory, those meshes could be connected if they were close enough together, right? Is that right?
Yeah. And really what this comes down to is it's kind of funny. You kind of start having respect for how much Verizon, all those really have to plan out their networks. So for example, I have 4 of these in the house. It would be very inefficient for this device to say, oh, I can see that one upstairs. I can see then the one in the kitchen. Then I'll go to the roof. Oh, now I only have 1 hop left and I can make it 1. So what you can do is they have different modes. So this is what's called a client mode. So this one client means this is going to go around with me. It can still repeat messages in the mesh, but it's not giving priority to that. There's another mode that you just set it up and it's called router mode. But you need to be well coordinated because router mode should be a device that's high up, has really good range, because it's going to get priority to redisperse messages. But if people put a router mode, but it's all up to us, right? Like there's no rules, there's nothing. So if I put this in router mode, I'm really going to mess other people up because this is going to start getting priority. It's down in my basement. But if you have a really well coordinated group of people, and Omaha community has been great. We're all been talking about, hey, what mode are you using? Well, how high is that? Do you have good coverage of Omaha? Can you see that? Like, because these are all kind of line of sight. I would still call them line of sight devices. If you could put one on like the First National Tower here in Omaha, we'd be able to connect maybe to Des Moines, right? Like they're very, very long range.
Really?
I mean, obviously from 30,000 feet up, I'm getting it all the way down. So if you have good line of sight, Denver's a really fun area because they have some really good mountain peaks that people have put these on. So they get really good coverage. But yeah, it's a really fun project. And again, I think for this community, it's, if you've ever thought about getting into ham radio, but you don't want to go take the test, play around with this. This will tell you if you want to actually get into ham radio, because it's a good little tester to see if you really enjoy it when you start playing around with it. Because building the radio is half the fun. Putting all those parts together, and it's a good time.
Yeah, it's like almost like a Raspberry Pi kit, right?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Then you can do certain things with them. You talk about locations, and are they limited on hops? Then is that what I heard you say?
So they are limited on hops.
Okay.
So that's what. So actually, the developers, their first experience with this becoming really popular was all the guys brought these to DEF CON and it crashed. Like the mesh couldn't handle, because these are not time operated, meaning a lot of devices that are kind of run like this. Hey, we have a schedule. I'm going to transmit for 15 seconds. I'm going to listen for 15 seconds. I'm going to transmit. I'm going to listen. And all devices are on that same cadence. These are not. These are kind of just like, hey, I'm going to talk. Now I'm going to talk. Now I'm going to talk. So when they had a lot in there, it didn't work well. So they've been working with, okay, if you're going to be in an environment like that, if you're in a really saturated area, you guys probably want to operate in this preset, which is kind of, you talk longer, you talk shorter, you send more data, less data, larger bandwidth, less bandwidth. So it's an evolving project where they're kind of learning as it's been getting more popular. They kind of have recommendations for, are you in a sparsely, densely area with these devices, or are you going to be at a conference where all of a sudden 500 guys are going to show up with Meshtastic nodes, and what's going to work the best?
They kind of build themselves as a ham alternative.
They do. Yes. And it's funny, in Omaha, the guys I've been talking to, about half of them are hams. Half of them are just nerdy guys like us who love tech. But the nerdy guys have been, all the hams like, oh, you'll become one of us. Don't worry. Like if you're talking like that now, just wait. If you want to come become one of us.
One of us. Yeah. Yep. Meshtastic, just like it sounds, meshtastic.org. If you want to check that out. Brian says, that's the value of listening to the show. He says, I've never heard of Meshtastic before. Meshtastic. There we go. Before this evening, a little too much Buffalo Trace. And it really sounds interesting. So super cool.
Yeah. And I'm getting better, guys. I was actually away from Discord for a long time just because I don't sit at this computer very often. Yeah. But I'm getting better at actually checking those messages. So if you have any questions, feel free to DM me on Discord.
How long do you think you'll do it for?
Judging by the rate at how fast I've been buying them, I just bought another really cool one. It's a really small white unit. So at Lowe's, the solar powered lights that you can just mount to a wall that take in solar and they have lights. Well, you can just take the guts out and put a radio in there, and it's the same form factor, and it looks really cool. So I've been coming up with different form factors. I don't know. We'll see how long this one holds my interest. But I've been carrying one around all the time. I actually have one in my office at work that just stays there. And when I go to the work, I connect to that one. And this weekend, I might sneak onto the balcony at work and wire one where people can't see it because it's really high up. Our office is in a great spot. And if we could get a node there, we'd have really good line of sight all over Omaha. So.
I was headed out to West Shores and I drove by your office on Dodge and I was like, I know a guy that works.
Yeah, you've been in there. Yeah, tour there one time.
It was a ton of fun. Yeah, a ton of fun. Any chance? I mean, any thoughts of data transfer? I mean, I know like messaging and stuff, but
they've been playing around with both data, like how much packet data could we send? Like you can't send a picture. So it's a texting app, but you can't send pictures or anything. But other than that, to voice, like they would love to get to a point where you could use voice. I don't think that's much as a priority though, because you always have, like, if you really want to do voice, a ham radio repeater tower is way better. And the infrastructure is already there. The infrastructure is not there for texting off grid. You can use in ham. We do have a few ways to do it. Extremely expensive to get into. Those type of radios that can do that are hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So this is a more, affordable way to get into that. They're looking at all sorts of fun ways to use it. So LoRa, long range, the frequencies this is built on, this is what your Internet of Things is often built on. So a lot of like fridges, like those sort of frequencies that all kind of talk to each other, they're in that same unlicensed spectrum of about 900 megahertz.
Super cool.
Oh, it's fun. Cool. I want you to build one. I might even just give you one. I have 20. I'm gonna bring you one, and we're gonna see if we can get from Bellevue to my house. It'd be cool. Just message on it. Cool. All right, the one final thing that's also really cool is you also set a channel to where you can remote administer these through the mesh. So if, let's say, I put one on the roof of my work building, I don't need to get up there to configure it. You can use the mesh itself in an admin channel that's encrypted to, hey, turn off Bluetooth. Hey, I'm going to change this channel or do this, which is great for remote administration.
Yeah. No, right on. No, that sounds cool. I mean, it's super hamish, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah,
yes. It's ham adjacent. Yeah. It's very ham adjacent. Yeah.
I love it.
I call it the gateway drug to ham radio.
Do you think so?
Oh, for sure.
I was thinking the other way around. I was thinking more like ham is the gateway to this, because you're talking protocols and locations. I mean,
yeah,
ham is really an antenna and your equipment in one location. These you're talking about setting up devices around, hiding them around town. And
there's just a barrier to entry to ham. You have to take a test, and radios are not cheap. And so this will get someone's interest for $30. They can start playing without taking a test. And then they find out they love this sort of stuff. Like, I might go take that test. I might want to get into more. So that's why I think it's the other way around.
Yeah. Justin says ham adjacent. LOL. Does that make it bacon?
That's my new word for it. It's the bacon. Yep. It's the bacon to my ham.
Delicious. All right. Before we go, one other thing you wanted me to remind you to talk about LocalSend.
Oh, quick. Yes. This is just a quick recommendation. And what made me send you that message was because I had those photos that I was just showing on the screen earlier of my generator setup. I had them on my iPhone. We had 20 seconds before you and I were getting on, and I needed to get them to my computer. And this is where I kind of totally forgot I had set this up before. LocalSend is a super lightweight, great application that you can pretty much run on anything: Windows, Linux, Mac, iPhone, Windows Phone. And it is exactly what it says. It is to simply get a photo from one device to another, cross-platform. So think of AirDrop if you're an iOS person, but that is platform agnostic. It is the easiest to set up. Just install it, run it. So exactly what I did, I fired up LocalSend on Windows, fired it up on my iPhone, tap. Within 2 seconds, all my photos were over there. And it's just one of those, I don't have to think, okay, this is a Windows device. Maybe I'll email it to myself, open up my email. I've used it a bunch on my server rack with my Linux devices. When I'm sending config files back and forth, it is just way easier to fire up LocalSend than to even, for me, it's faster than firing up like a SSH session or FTP or anything like that. So
and local, right? This isn't, you're not sending these across the world.
Correct.
These are local devices.
Yep. It's Wi-Fi. I haven't played too much, but I think there is a way for, like, if you had it on your phone and I had it on mine, I think there is a way I don't know. I haven't looked into it there. All I've done is I've used it on my LAN, but I know it is a little bit more powerful. I think there are ways you can set up like a server, like a LocalSend server that you could set up to talk to, but I haven't looked into that piece. Okay. But it solves a problem that almost everyone here has probably had. Yeah.
Well, you're trying to get a file from one thing to another, and it's not the same thing. Shoot, even to be honest, getting Windows to talk to Windows sometimes is a little bit of a challenge.
Yep.
Decentralized. So from their site and at localsend.org, decentralized, cross-platform, it's free, it's open source code, end-to-end encryption. They say easy to use. I guess I take your word on that, right? Pretty easy to.
The easiest thing to use. It is.
And they have to, both devices need to be on the same network, right? Unless you set up this, what you were talking about.
And that's where I probably should have looked into it before I gave it. I don't know. But like, for example, like I just fired it up. Here's my app and it's seeing the one device that you can't see. It's probably washed out, but it's my Windows machine. Yeah. And it's on probably the Wi-Fi. But I do know there is a way that you can have it be so you don't have to be on the exact same network. I think there's a way to use Bluetooth. I guess it does tell me, please ensure the desired target is also on the same Wi-Fi network.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that answers that. But
okay. Yeah. Well, worth looking at. This is the first time I've seen it too. Yeah. LocalSend.org. Worth looking into as far as I mean, even if you're thinking about, I've got a Mac. I'm on a Mac now, but I got Windows boxes. Now, I run those through the Unraid server, so you can, but for some folks who don't have that intermediary server of some kind set up, this is kind of a way to get stuff off your Android phone onto Windows or off of Windows onto your iPhone.
Without plugging in any IP address or anything, it just says, oh, there's another person running LocalSend. And it comes up with a funny name for it. It's like, gives you like purple. This is purple rain and you're orange peach. And I just say, okay, I look at my machine and you can name them if you want, but you don't have to know any IP addresses or anything. It's very much AirDrop-esque for all devices.
Monetization? How are they gonna?
That's a great question. Yeah. I do not know.
Okay. They have a Discord and a GitHub if you want to check it out. LocalSend, all one word, localsend.org. I'll have that in the show notes as well.
Open source, which is always good to see too.
Yeah. No, right on. Mike, I told you, we'll wrap it with this. I told you I'd fill you in on SerraFresh. I didn't call it that, but we for a long time were HelloFresh customers. And actually, Sarah canceled the account without even telling me. She was like, we're done with HelloFresh. Well, I mean, it's kind of listen, it's still in between eating out and buying food yourself.
Price wise, you mean?
Yeah, price wise.
Yeah.
Right. And she was just like, we'd done it for 6 or 7 years. And she was like, I think I can do this. And she's like, as long as you're willing to cook it, I'll prep it. So on Sundays at the Sunday night dinner, we pick meals for the week. We've got all these recipe cards. And so we go through the recipe cards like, okay, what do we want this week? We pick 3 meals or 4, whatever. And she'll build a shopping list and go out, and then she puts them together. She'll buy the right amount and prep them and actually puts them in a bag.
Wow.
Like you would like a grocery bag.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like the HelloFresh comes in the paper bags.
Correct.
She puts them in paper bags, and she even writes on the outside what the recipe is and what day of the week we have it scheduled for. Now, she really likes to do that. That's kind of her thing. Not so much on the cooking. I mean, she'll cook it, but her personality likes to prep for all that stuff. And so it's been no change. I come in like it's Tuesday. I open the fridge. There's a Tuesday bag in the fridge. We pull it out, and because we're prepping it ourselves, if we want to prep more, she can put more into the recipe, right?
Yeah.
We'll cook more.
I'm surprised she's just not multiplying everything by 10 and all of a sudden starting a little neighborhood SerraFresh company.
Yeah.
If you're already doing it, right, just divide it out. You don't get to pick your meals. You get to eat what the Collisons are eating, but here's your,
and like meals. Last night we did couscous and meat and, a little bit of a Tuscan heat in there and some green or some peppers, some that were supposed to be stuffed. We ended up cutting them up and put them in. We made a little bit more than we normally would have made, which was super delicious. And you kind of make it the way you want to make it. You get good enough at this that you're like, oh, okay, let's tweak this a little bit to get that.
Yeah.
Or we'll replace, like she had said on one of them, hey, she doesn't like green peppers, so she got yellow or orange peppers on for that instead. So it's allowed us to kind of customize the meals. There's still HelloFresh. Did you say
you're using the recipe cards that you've been getting over there?
Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect.
We have thousands of them.
Right.
Like Sarah and Sammy are both organizers, so they've put them in binders by protein. And it's actually working. It's working. I alluded to this in a show a couple weeks ago. It's working really, really well. And it's given her, she really likes putting those kits. We even bought some specialized plastic containers that are really small. And then you're like, okay, how do we clean these containers? So we bought a dishwasher, like it's designed for small items you put that in there in the dishwasher. And so, it's working. It's working out. The other night I came in, I'm like, what are we doing? And Sammy's like, it's in the fridge, Dad, just go grab it. Like, oh, that's great. I didn't know it was ready to go.
That's awesome.
And so we call it SerraFresh and not available for sale. But I say this to say we've successfully kind of transitioned from a meal service, which, by the way, super helpful during the pandemic, saved our bacon during the pandemic. As far as all those meals, we never would have cooked like that during the pandemic if we hadn't had HelloFresh.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have done it. Taught us 100 new recipes that really made our eating experience a lot better.
So you're the prime candidate for it. Have you looked into any of those self-hosted recipe, like storing them digitally? to where you could tap. It makes the list, the shopping list for you. Have you?
No, I need to.
Just more paper style.
I need to. I do think at this point Sarah likes she's good at
paper. Yeah. And sometimes if it works for you, it works for you.
She gets we get 3 recipes. She sees what needs. She's so good at the grocery store. She's just like,
yeah,
okay, here's what I need. Here's what I'm going to get. So
I don't know which one my buddy uses, but he said his favorite part is apparently there's a random select. So he clicks random and then he clicks add the items to his list. And then he just goes to the store and buys it. And he gets home and he sees, which random thing did it pick for me? And he does it throughout the week. And I don't know, it sounded pretty nice. I didn't ask him the name of it. And because Hannah and I don't cook. Well, we do, but we're pretty basic. We need to do something like this to spice it up, but we haven't.
Yeah.
Like Justin Simmons says mealy. Maybe mealy is one of those.
Yeah.
Self-hosted.
Mealy. You know what? You got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
That's the big, like anything, you got to get into this. By the way, if you're bored on your cooking, I still recommend HelloFresh. I don't have a code for them anymore. They've been super aggressive about trying to get us back.
Really?
Oh my God. They're throwing money at us.
They're like, man, we had them for years. Where'd they go?
Here's my recommendation. Sign up for HelloFresh, take advantage of their free stuff, get a couple meals, and then quit. And I mean, quit completely. Then they'll offer you, maybe, I don't know, maybe the algorithm will determine that, right? But then they'll offer you a bunch of money to come back, take the money to come back, do it for a couple weeks, quit.
Lather, rinse, repeat.
I don't know how long you could do that for, but they keep throwing money at us. Like, come back. And we're like, no, I think we're good. And listen, the service was great. One of the things I've noticed, so grocery store produce, HelloFresh produce, completely different.
Which one's better?
Your grocery store for sure. It's giant. Now, I'm not always sure that's a good thing. Like the chicken we get from a grocery store, giant, but that may be because of steroids.
Right.
And where your HelloFresh may actually be more organic than than buying it from the grocery store. So you got to kind of figure out what you're getting sourced. You're also, if you're going to buy produce at your grocery store, they don't sell it in the sizes that you need for HelloFresh. So you got to kind of plan, you might want to plan a couple meals with green onions where you're going to get because in the grocery store, you're going to get a bundle of those things, right? You can certainly waste a lot of food if you buy from the grocery store and you don't cook often. You will waste a lot of food.
Oh yeah.
And so be careful. It drives me crazy. And same on the meat side of things. If you buy, you buy meat packages in the store, they're giant. And now, depending on your family, there's 3 of us, right? And so some of those packets are 2 or 3 times more what we need. And so, yes, it's cheaper, but if you're throwing it away,
it's not cheap. Yeah.
You're paying the same price, friends. Yeah. Right. Justin says quality's better, normally cheaper. And that is true. But the waste can be a real problem. I mean, if you're buying,
I think he was talking about the Real Green Grocer that he mentioned right above.
Okay.
A Real Green Grocer or a butcher.
Well, this is true of buying from the grocery store, which is from buying these services. It is cheaper. If I think now, depends on your region, depends where you live, depends what you have access to, all those kinds of things. But waste is a real deal. And, you can buy a bunch of apples, and if you only eat half of them, guess what? They're twice as expensive as they were when you bought them.
Yep.
Right. You don't think about that when you're throwing that food away, but you're kind of like, well, I thought it was a good deal. Well, if you only eat half of them, it's twice as expensive, friends. So a little bit of planning kind of goes into that. But I think we found what works is she preps it, I cook it, Sammy and I cook it.
Yeah.
And it's working out really well. Sarah Fresh, no code. No, you can't get in on it. You can't join the Mesh network.
Oh, but I'm in Omaha. Come on.
It's pretty great. She's doing a bang up job, and it's super fun. Mike, anything on the horizon you're looking forward to before we wrap this up? Anything you're looking out ahead on?
I have been back on the train of self-hosting my life, so I'm sure I'll have some more things for you.
Yeah.
There's one that I saved for tonight, but we'll talk about it on a future one. If you're into tracking data about your car and you want to do it a self-hosted way, we'll cover that one the next time I'm on.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to get you should look ahead at a date. Like now that I got you should look ahead at a date. We should get you back on for that. So Mike, thanks for you're the easiest guest on the planet. It's always great to have you on. Thanks for
letting me come on and ramble.
No, dude. So you helped me think through, as we're thinking about my my generator setup, as you were talking about it, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm thinking along the right lines.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually need to drill through my basement wall to get
it.
So I've got a little bit of work to do. It's concrete block, so it's not that hard, type thing. But and you've given me this Meshtastic. It's like maybe now with me, I'd set it up and then I'd do it twice,
and you would never use it again.
I'd be like,
yeah,
why do I need this again?
And you don't. It's just for fun.
Yeah. I know. Well, I mean, it would be, when we think about having backup communication type things.
Yep.
When the storm hit, T-Mobile went down and I lost internet and my phone service for a couple hours. And the T-Mobile was super fast in getting it back. It was amazing how fast that came back. But we were down to LTE. Yeah. It's like, for
your whole home, because that's your internet.
It is. Yeah. It is. Now,
for you, it'd be fun for your family members because you have kids that live across Omaha. You guys might have some fun with it.
Yeah.
If you did that.
Yeah.
Justin Simmons nailed it with Lou Blogger. Yeah. That's the name. You nailed it, Justin. We'll talk about that in a future one. I've gone deep. I've been creating iOS shortcuts to feed the API. Oh, there's a lot of fun there that we could talk about. So
Joe says, I've been running Lou Blogger Docker container to keep up with oil changes.
Maybe we talk about this as a post show or something, because you guys, I didn't know this was going to be, we moved it to the end because we didn't know, but apparently you guys are already fans of it.
Let's do post show.
We'll do post show.
If you're okay. If you are a Patreon subscriber, you'll get the post show in your feed. So hang tight on that. If you're not, it's okay. I don't restrict you from it. Head out to theaverageguy.tv, a YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com/theaverageguy.tv. I think you'll see the logo with the glasses. There's a couple Average Guy TV things going on there. Look for the black logo with the glasses, and you can watch the video there if you're not a regular subscriber and you want to catch the post-show content. Mike, so hang tight 1 second. Let me wrap this up. Remind everybody to take advantage of all the community stuff we're doing in our Discord group if you want to join. And Mike is over there. theaverageguy.tv/Discord. Just ask to be let in. I'll let you in as long as you have a fairly, regular looking account. You can leave us a message on Discord or on over there on Pod page. Head out to homegadgetgeeks.com. There's a little blue icon with a microphone. Leave a 30-second message and then email me, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Let me know you've done that because I rarely check that email address. Let me know you've done that, and we'll play your message on the show. The AverageGuy.tv platform, both web and media hosting, is still powered by Maple Grove Partners. Christian's doing a bang-up job over there. He's still doing a ton of stuff, and many of you have taken advantage of. He has plans still, inflation-fighting plans, $10. Check it out today, maplegrovepartners.com. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. TJ is coming back. We've had him on, a couple months ago, Huddleston. He's coming back to chat next week, and I'll be scheduling some more. So thanks for those of you who come out and watch us live. And we'd love to have more of you join us. Big thanks to Justin, Joe, Brian. I saw Ken a little bit earlier. And I saw Tony and Chad. Thank you guys for coming out and joining us live. We'll be back next week. Join us live 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, the AverageGuy.tv/live. Thanks for coming out. With that, we'll say goodbye.